It's time to break up with your inner critic and find your caregiver. I'm partnering with Green Mountain at Fox Run to host the first ever Be Her Now Body Kindness Weekend, just for women. Join me Thursday, June 1st through Sunday, June 4th for a weekend of love, fun, and self-care. You'll experience Green Mountain's world-renowned program and brand new body kindness spiral up activities, all in the natural beauty of Vermont. Let's take the time to work on ourselves, heal with others, and get inspired to create a better life. Learn more at fitwoman.com/bodykindness. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. I am very, very excited to share this episode with you. It's with someone I admire greatly. She is an author and an advocate. I have recommended her book to my clients for the past several years. You may know her as the Militant Baker. Her name is Jess Baker. And I really appreciated our honest and thoughtful conversation that we had, and I think you will too. We get into a lot of different topics, and we really just scratched the surface on our discussion, and I look forward to hopefully getting to have her on a future podcast as well. Especially take note of our conversations around healthism and also health at every size. And there's a part where I ask her for some advice and feedback. It's a question I've been pondering a lot lately. This idea, ever since I was 9 years old, I remember having a memory about how amazing the human body was. This was not from a diety place whatsoever. This was not about appearance. This was about feeling my heartbeat, noticing my breath, and noticing that I would be alive until one day I wasn't. And actually, psychological studies show that around that age is when people begin to become aware of their mortality. I happened to be in a church setting when all of this was coming together for me. But it really started out quite innocently. And I remembered I just had this kind of aha moment where it was like, yeah, so, let's take care of our bodies. And unfortunately that got very messed up and twisted along the way. Like many people do, got sucked into diet culture there. But, I'm very proud of my role as a registered dietitian and a fitness expert. And I do think that part of my calling is with my peers and helping them to see that the way we talk about people and bodies is oppressive and harmful. And I'm learning every day. But I do find it very interesting, this idea that no, we do not need to tell people that health is a moral obligation. And Jess and I get into that conversation. But also this idea that it's okay to be interested in pursuing health and what that looks like, and needing to disentangle it from weight loss and dieting and oppression and all these interesting things that I can't say I fully know the answer to, but I know I'm going to be bringing it up on several podcasts, and this is one of them. And just one quick warning, there may be a little bit of adult content and language in this conversation. So if you are around little ones, you might want to grab your headphones or listen at a time where you can really dive in and engage in the conversation with us. Thank you so much for listening. If you could take a moment and leave a rating and review, that would be wonderful. I'm looking at my downloads and looking at my ratings and reviews to see how I can improve and the type of reach I'm having as I make my decisions about continuing on providing content that you love. So you can always email me, Rebecca@bodykindnessbook.com, and send me feedback, show ideas, guest suggestions. I'm always open to hearing what you have in mind. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Because real health is about being good to yourself, it's time for Body Kindness, the place where all bodies fit and weight is just a number. Hi, I'm Rebecca Scritchfield, author of the book Body Kindness, registered dietitian, nutritionist, and host of this podcast. My topic today is why we all need to stop the fat talk and live life now. And my special guest to discuss this today is Jess Baker. Jess Baker is a blogger, speaker, author, mental health professional, cat lover in all caps, and unabashed fat chick. She is on a mission to turn our society's concept of beauty on its oppressive head, as she genuinely knows for a fact that every person in this world is worthy of respect and feeling valued regardless of their size, shape, shade, sex, ability, gender, or age. On her website, The Militant Baker, she preaches the importance of body autonomy, self-love, mental health, strong coffee, and even stronger language. She also posts a million outfit photos because they're fun, political, and pretty. Welcome so much, Jess, to the show. I'm so grateful that you're here to talk to me today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I would just love to dive in and share with the Body Kindness listeners. Can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your work?
Yeah, this all happened by accident. I stumbled upon some blogs, a blog specifically called The Nearsighted Owl, about 4.5 years ago. And it really changed the way I saw my body. And for the first time, I had this realization that maybe I didn't have to hate my body for the rest of my life. And so that sent me on a blogging adventure, which ended up doing some photos that challenged, I don't know if you remember, but around 4 years ago, maybe, God, I lose track of time, but there was the Abercrombie debacle where some old quotes came up from, I think, 2006, and everybody was pissed about it. And my friend and I did a photo shoot, a counter campaign, where we posed and made very similar images, very similar to their ads, but with my fat body in place of their thinner models. And so that really gave me the platform to do more, and I've continued to do it. And it's really, to be honest with you, the messages I think that I put out then are very different than the ones that I do now, as I've continued to learn a lot about fat acceptance, about equality, about civil rights and their movements, and about health, to be honest with you, and intersectionality. So I'm excited to talk to you today.
I remember your work in kind of, being the counter message with the campaign. And then I was reminded of it because I saw it on the documentary Embrace. So it was so great to see you in there, and so great to see that as an example of, especially with advertising and modeling, it's like, this shit ain't right. We don't see what the perspective would all people look like. We don't see that diversity. And I think that's a major barrier.
Yeah, and we don't realize how easily conditioned we are. I think a lot of us are aware that it happens, but I don't know if we understand the level in which we internalize it. And so, I kind of question this trying to reclaim beauty and sexy. I think it's a good place to start. That's certainly where I started. I was doing a sexy photo campaign. And so now I challenge the importance of that. But I think, in the mainstream, we have all of these advertisements that place thinner bodies as more acceptable and desirable than fat bodies. And I think still, even having those images, it's called culture jamming sometimes, where you produce counter images and ideas that kind of stops and rebounds what we're normally used to. And I think that kind of disruption is important. So I'm glad I did those. I did a few more. I created this fake perfume because we never see larger bodies in like the super sexy perfume ads, especially with smaller bodies. And I think that's something that I was really fascinated by when I started dating again after having this epiphany. I was told that my options were so limited, that I was only going to find a partner that would have to tolerate my body, and I should be grateful for what I get, which severely limited my options across the board. And I found that to not be true for the first time in my life. And I was fascinated by this these images that we see where we pair fat bodies with fat bodies in relationships like Mike and Molly, and thin bodies with thin bodies. And occasionally we see like the Family Guy couple, you know, where it's kind of the attractive thin woman and the fatter man, and that's acceptable, but we never see it the other way around. So I was happy to put out some of those images too, because I don't know, I just feel like disruption is always important. So I had a good time with that. I do less photo shoots now, but it was fun when it happened.
Cool. Well, speaking of something recent, I follow you on Instagram. I love your Instagram, and I saw that you were off. I don't know exactly where, but I recognize it as Jamaica. But there was this awesome picture, and you were like, I don't know if it was cliff diving. I don't know. Maybe you could tell me, but it was like jumping off a rock, like cannonballing into the ocean. And just, I love the shot, but I was like, oh, she's out having fun. And that's great, because that's what we're supposed to be doing, like out there enjoying life. And it just looked like from the shot that you were having an awesome time. So I'd love to know like what you were doing. To me, this picture, it communicated this like, get out there and live your life, like right now as you are, go do it. And so I was hoping you could shed light on that.
Yeah, that trip specifically I took by myself, which I don't normally, unless it's work. I don't, I normally travel with my partner, and I wanted to do something super independent. I wanted to go to a different country specifically. This happened around the time of the immigration banning, and so that was really complicated. I had complicating feelings about that, but I already had it booked. And so I went, and I had some very enlightening moments, some really heartbreaking moments. But I think body-wise, for me, it was very interesting to be in a culture that does not actively hate fat bodies. That was really, I think there's many layers of complicated things that happen around that, but I was not actively hated, which was fascinating to me. And I was there to experience beauty, and that was really amazing. And so I pushed myself. I went snorkeling. I pushed myself outside my comfort zone. I went snorkeling. It's beautiful. It's one of my favorite things to do. I jumped off a smaller cliff that was near where I was staying, and then I jumped off a 35-foot cliff, which was, oh my God. You just have to make up your mind. You're like, I'm doing it no matter what. There's no backing out. And it was really fun. So
did you make somebody else like do it right before you, so you knew like, okay, it's deep, or are there people jumping off all the time? I don't know if I could be the first one. I'd be like, somebody else go, and then maybe I'll go.
Oh, there's people there that cliff dive all the time, and they will do backflips off this cliff into the water. Like, I would break my spine, but there was plenty of people, I'm sure millions of people jumped off this. It's a really popular place, but it was really fun regardless. And so, yeah, being able to appreciate my body for just taking me there and letting me have those experiences. And right now I'm really appreciating my body for the way it lets me engage and experience the world. And so Jamaica was very much that for me.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I have to ask, because it just, you said something that just hearing it, just like it breaks my heart. It hurts my feelings. You said that like you weren't used to being in a place that doesn't actively hate fat bodies. And I assume you're talking about in America, we actively hate fat bodies. So can you expand on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's so important to step outside American culture, because, and Jamaica's a very extreme example. I knew walking into the airport that I was going somewhere that appreciated larger bodies more than America. So I knew that going in. I think there's some really interesting harassment that happens in Jamaica, which is a whole other conversation. But it was kind of nice to know going into that I would just face, the only people who gave me weird stares were the tourists that were hanging out on the other side of where I was. And that was it. And expected, because there's, a fat girl in a bikini. And but it was really nice. And I spoke to a lot of people who lived there. I was by myself. I feel like we can do a lot of different kinds of visiting And my favorite kind is to get to know the people who live there and the real things that happen, real life. And we did talk about body image with quite a few people, and they were just, it was fascinating, the amount of shock on their face when I explained to them that America really hates fat bodies, and, kind of what I deal with working online and even in real life. And they're just shocked. Like, it just wasn't something that I think they ever encounter or rarely encounter. You can't generalize 100%, but it was definitely an experience. We'll just say that.
Yeah. I mean, I just, I think that I find it very frustrating that we are in a culture where it's okay. Like, if you want to hurt somebody, bash their body or, call them fat, so we could go Lady Gaga at the Super Bowl. But I even hate that example because she fits the thin ideal anyway. But like, this is unacceptable to me that this is what we do. I mean, as long as we are fearing weight gain, fearing becoming fat, what in my experience with my friends who are fat, with clients, is like, they'll have a scenario where they call themselves, where their friend calls themselves fat. And it's like, what am I supposed to think, when I weigh more than you? Oh, well, not you. And I just don't, besides completely smash diet culture to smithereens, I don't know how in the heck we're going to get past this horrible, ugly place where we're at now. What do you think?
It's really hard to say. We saw this explosion of body positive everything, I think in 15, and it continued into 16, and here we are in 17. And a lot of what I'm seeing, honestly, is fat phobic and parading around as body positivity.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to me how, we want, and it also is very similar. It is white feminism, where the intersectionality issues are ignored. And it's almost like we don't actually want to talk about the hard stuff. And so I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen, because we really are in a time where there's no handbook for this shit in America. Like, I don't know. And I don't know how that's going to affect size, but I do know how it's going to affect other body issues like race, and ability, and all kinds of other issues that all have to do with bodies. And so I don't know what to expect, but I do know, for me, that I do have a role to play in this. I'm successful because of being acceptable enough when I started. And I've gained weight since then. It's made me less acceptable. But I am a white, able-bodied, cisgender woman. And that is why I'm successful online, is because, the only thing controversial about me is my stomach. And it's really unfair that my success comes from that. But I think right now it's really important to me to use this platform that I do have to remind people that body image work is much bigger than we think it is. And it's much more complicated. It's really messy and hard, and the truth is really difficult. But we have to start looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say that I mean, 100% in agreement with everything that you're seeing. And I have definitely witnessed the divide between the body positive space and saying and identifying, no, I'm fat positive, because body positive has this line of like, oh, no, that's too fat for me, and you do see, like you were talking about, the white cisgender kind of embracing, but now it's like conditional body positivity, or like now, oh, I'm being body positive because I'm going to pose in a picture where I like bend in half to show a tiny little gut and, right, just love yourself. I see these images on Instagram, and it's so frustrating because I think real work isn't going to get done. It's like, on the one sense, you want more people using, body acceptance words and language, because that's the whole point of the activism, right? Is to try to, I guess, I'm questioning, like, to try to make it more mainstream. So the more people are talking about it, the more growth you can have. But I do think that it falls short, and I'm glad you brought up the word fat phobic. Like, I don't think a lot of people realize that they, have a weight bias, and that there is, stigma around with being in a fat body. Could you enlighten listeners, like, if they said, okay, I don't want to be fat phobic, is there anything that you can enlighten them on steps they can take? Like, they really want to change.
So I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and I feel like we have to be gentle a little, more calling people in than calling out, when it comes to this fat phobia that we're finding within the body positive, quote unquote, movement. A lot of eating disorder recovery pages on Instagram, I'm just now starting to see how harmful they are. And it's exactly what you were just talking about. But they're also super, super popular. And so I think they are, just like you said, introducing this vocabulary and these thoughts that maybe people haven't had before. And it's probably easier for people who are just starting to walk into those Instagram pages because they're non-threatening. They're thin, white, healthy looking, quote unquote. I'm just gonna I'm doing air quotes all over the place. Just see, honestly, they look like our traditional definition of beauty. And so I think they're an intro, and I try really hard to not divide so much as encourage progress. So I want to be totally and completely honest that I was, we talked about this. I was far more two-dimensional years ago than I am now. And so I think any introduction is great. The important part for people, if they really want to make a difference in their lives and in other lives, is to keep moving forward. I think when we get stagnant, that's where the problem happens. So for these, if we're talking specifically about these eating disorder Instagram accounts, I see you, your feelings are valid. I need you to work on being more inclusive and diverse. To myself, when people come to my Instagram page, I see myself, my feelings are valid, and I need to continue to move forward and include more diversity. And so I think for your listeners, not readers, for your listeners, wherever you start is fine. Mm-hmm. Just keep moving forward, listening to others, looking for diversity, following accounts that really push your boundaries, and, reading. The Establishment is an online magazine. Maybe they call themselves just a website. It's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Going to Everyday Feminism and reading some really interesting things that push your comfort zone. And I think as long as we continue to do that, no matter how difficult it is, we're going to keep moving in the right direction. Stagnation, I think, is the biggest enemy.
Yeah. Well, and even understanding that the idea that fat is bad, or fat is in my space, right? Fat is unhealthy, right? That was put in there, we're not born, we come out believing that, that is put in there by culture. And, we can challenge it, and so, yeah, I agree with what you're saying with moving forward. And also, don't be afraid of making mistakes. But it's you have to use that voice. I know I was very afraid in the dietetics and nutrition community. The word die is in the title, and diet, things that I realized after starting in the field that I was part of the problem. And when I got, the guts to say, okay, how can I change? I want to be a better person. I really want to help people, and help myself and just everything. But it's then you get to a point where it's
I have to be, willing to say with my voice that this stat is wrong, that this is body oppression, that this is the truth about dieting. And I learned the more I said it, the more comfortable I got. But you know what I'm trying to say? It's like you have to be willing to not be the mainstream popular opinion, but believe that in order for you to be a better person, a happier person, when you see this injustice happening, to use your voice and speak out against the oppression.
Definitely. And that can be in lots of different ways, depending on the person and what's good for them. I think also another part of that is know that you might get feedback from the group that you're trying to be an ally for that is maybe critical, and learning how to not take that personally, because it's not. And really, there's this really cool disapproval matrix that Ann Friedman, it's on my blog right now. I just love it so much. And it shows the quadrants of people you should listen to when it comes to feedback. And I think that one of the sections that you should listen to is critics and professionals in the field of whatever it is you're doing. And for me, that means also marginalized and oppressed groups that you are trying to be an ally for. They are the professionals. And so listening to others and trying to not take it personally and using it as a tool to improve, which is so hard. I mean, I can say that as if it's like the easiest thing in the world. It is not. I think we all struggle with it. I still struggle with it because we're trying to help, But yeah, so yes, use your voice, listen, improve. There we go. 1, 2, 3.
Awesome. 3 easy steps.
Yeah. 3 not at all easy steps to create change.
Yeah. Oh, well, I know, and it can feel like difficult work, but it's important work that is worth it, even if whatever you're doing to work on for yourself, it's like, even when you get better, like, and feel more free, it's like, well, it's like we're all going to be more free when we can all be more free together, and I really do believe that, that it's, I don't really know if like the work or the effort is ever done because we're looking to get progress and everything like that. But it's, I certainly from the standpoint of body kindness, and that's the idea of, how can you create a better life? And, I'm coming at it from the health angle, from if you're not going to diet again, but you do care about taking care of your health and well-being, here's some tools, here's a different way of looking at it, here's how you can, learn from examples and everything. But I often was like, oh gosh, I just don't want people to like read it and be like, so is this going to help me lose weight? Like, it would be not the purpose of, of that type of a book at all. And people ask like, well, when's the work going to be done? When's the effort going to be done? I was like, I don't know, when you're dead, it's like you evolve, and, like Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. And yeah. So I think you got to be willing to kind of, stick with it. Yeah. And I am seeing more, when you talked about intersectionality, I'm hearing that come up, more and more. Can you give me some examples of like why that is, like, give me an example of intersectionality in the fat acceptance movement and why it's so important, like as an education opportunity for listeners?
I have a really good quote from my friend Sonia Renee Taylor. She lives in the Bay Area, and this is probably my favorite thing that I love everything that comes out of her mouth. And this is probably really like,
she's from The Body's Not an Apology, right?
Yes, she runs The Body's Not an Apology. She is the most incredible woman. I've said often that if there was like one person I could save in the world, like, that like if your house is on fire and you can save one thing, if the world was on fire and I could save one thing for the next civilization, it would be Sonia.
Oh,
I just love her. So we were kind of talking about what we touched on a little bit earlier, which was, this year, these next 4 years, what are we looking at? How does size activism fit, right? Into how does fat activism, how does body image fit into what's going on? And so she has this quote and she says, start that again. She has this quote where she says, while what we want is good and moral people to be good and moral, I think it is important and can be even more pronounced that a world that hates Black, brown, Muslim, disabled bodies will always hate fat women. The fight is not separate. And so I think that we have to look, of course we want people to do the right things for the right reasons. But coming at it at that approach where, and if we always hate fat women, we're always going to hate women. And we're all interconnected when it comes to a world determined to keep us down. And so it is impossible to talk about fat women without addressing racism as well, and ableism, and all of these other components that have to do with our bodies because they are all connected. And I have an extraordinary amount of privilege as a white woman. It doesn't matter how fat I am. I will still always have that privilege. And acknowledging that, figuring out how to use that correctly and how to not overstep. I'm still learning those things. It's very complicated. Also checking in with those things as we work within this body positive. I'm going to just use body liberation movement. We're going to go with liberation.
I love that. I love that word. So, okay, I just got this crazy idea because I actually want to ask you for some advice.
Okay.
Well, it has to do with healthism. Okay. So, all right, the labels of what I do. So registered dietitian, fitness expert, but non-diet, true health and well-being, rah, 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 and that was, literally, I remember being 9 and, oh, my heart's beating and what an amazing thing. It's going to beat till it doesn't beat anymore. Wow. Maybe you want to take care, stuff started really innocently with me. And then I got the diet magazines and just the whole, things got worse before it got better, and hooray, here I am. But so I'm a member of ASDA, Association for Size, Diversity, and Health, and I'm part of the education committee. And that's where I first started getting educated about healthism. And so, I guess part of me, my take has been oh yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with the ideas that the most important thing people can do in life does not have to be working on their health, right? And the idea that it's okay for people to not want to work on their health, any shape, size, whatever. It's okay to say this is not a priority, right? Agree 1,000%. And then I go, okay, well, so I'm this health expert person. So if people want to, work on improving their well-being and, in whatever type of a way, I can help them, do it in a way where that's not dieting and not disordered, and that they really do feel, happier and healthier and stronger. So that's still good work, I think, right? But I just scratch my head, how could I be perpetuating healthism and what I'm doing? So I'm trying to even just use the word more so that other health experts know, hey, you guys don't need to be pressuring people that that's the most important thing to do. But then I also have to question, am I doing, how is there a way that I am possibly pushing healthism in a way that I just don't know? So I don't even know if you can help me or not, but I figured I'd ask you.
Yeah, I think I feel like I agree with everything you said, and that's really surprising to me. It's very, very rare that I speak to anyone, to be honest, where I am where they're at as well. And here's the thing. I'm currently writing some sort of memoir book, and there are a couple of really huge themes that I just can't ignore. And one of them is health at every size. And I had to, and I've really never told the internet this because it's so complicated. I'm still trying to untangle. Health is so complicated. And we know that health is our new beauty myth. It's we've taken oh, you don't have to look a certain way. You're valuable if you're healthy now. And so it's the same thing. It just is a different mask. So, but I had to come to this realization as I've been writing that I teach health at every size. I wrote a chapter on health that was loved by Linda Bacon. It's been reviewed by many professionals and loved. So I have this understanding of the concept of health at every size. However, I do not understand how to practice it at all. My relationship with food and exercise is beyond fucked. Like I have never learned how to actually eat and how to exercise without the goal being to become smaller. And so it's just so fascinating to me that I can logically understand all of this and teach it, and yet practicing it is completely different because it's a mindful healing. We want to simplify health and be like, eat X amount of calories and exercise X amount of time and you will be good. And it's really more complicated than that. As I know I'm preaching to the choir. But one thing I really appreciated about your book, and I am hesitant to pick up any book around body positivity and health, because I don't believe anyone owes anyone their health at all. I don't believe health is a requirement for worth. And that's something that, even most of the body positive people can't really accept. It's interesting. It's kind of our roadblock there. But what I appreciated about your book is the mindfulness focus and the connection of the body and the brain and healing the connection between those two, because I think that's where I am struggling to heal. And it's going to be a process, but it's just not like you can walk into, you can't just, oh, I understand health at every size, so now I'm going to be able to intuitively eat and exercise for fun. Like, it doesn't work that way for me. Maybe other people, I don't know.
No, I mean, so in my counseling practice, I might take somebody who literally came from a treatment center for an eating disorder, right? And they did not leave treatment, being able to give lectures on how you do intuitive eating, right? Like, they might be interested in far down the road embracing the concepts, but you don't just give people intuitive eating and be like, good luck. Like, I did not embrace it or learn it that way either, so it definitely is. It is. I think it's a thing that should have come natural, but once again, diet culture just fucked us all up, and I do think, and that's even kind of part of my suspicion, is that that's part of also why it is challenging for you, because like diet culture is the norm, right? So everywhere you turn, you can't look at a headline without finding out the 5 foods to avoid. Like, it is so ingrained culturally. Then any sort of personal trauma around food and body and dieting, which dieting is stressful. It is a traumatic experience. And, a lifetime of negative messages about your body and watching every action, that all adds up to a lot of confusion, that it's not going to be the easiest thing to just take, eating something like, I don't know, even like, I don't know, a kale and quinoa chicken or whatever type salad, you actually might really, really like the taste of that, right? But something is going to be there that's going to be like, health halo, good job, weight loss, A+.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? Just
totally.
Because that's been what is normalized and has been repeated and fed. And interestingly, so like when I was doing my chronic dieting, it was like fat-free craze. And this was like, so it would be like Snackwell's cookies or, whatever, Slim Fast I did for a while. I mean, I've done a lot of them, but it was like, to me, it was a lot easier to be like, okay, so just stop buying the sugar-free Jell-O and, like there were, and then, eat, other foods that actually give you energy, because it was like low cal. There was an easy switch. But when you look at today's diets in disguise, like paleo or Whole30 or clean eating, it now is taking like food that actually really does energize your body and helps your digestion and helps your immunity and like, you know, and gives you energy so that frankly you can go out and do the amazing things in your life, you know? But now it's like co-opting like stuff where people have a genuine intention and interest in part of how they take care of their bodies is through food, but it looks like every diet that's out there now. And so I think it's confusing as hell, actually.
That's interesting. This is why we can't have nice things. Humans ruin even the good stuff, you know? Yeah, I really believe that. So I've worked in mental health for a little while, for 4 or 5 years. And, you know, I watch people with their different coping mechanisms for survival, you know, and they're all different. Drugs, cigarettes, sex, shopping, cookies, you know, like it's all different, right? And we do the best we can. And that's all really we can expect of ourselves. And it's no one else's business to expect anything else. And so, I don't know, right now I'm just at this point where it's like, man, whatever you need to do to survive this world right now, because some crazy shit is happening. That was a really ableist term. I'm sorry. And I work in mental health. No excuse. The world is bananas. How about that?
It is.
So whatever you need to do to be okay. And I just wanted to also thank you. Going back to your like original, very vague question of if you're helping or hindering, I think for me personally, and I am not an expert on anything, there's going to be a counter argument to everything I say. But for me, I think it's really important to have more resources around what my friends call body trust. Do you know Dana and Hillary have been?
Yes, they are awesome.
They're incredible, incredible. And they were so needed because, you know, we do get lost in all of this, you know, diet, body image stuff that is really just harmful and is parading around as the secret to happiness. And so for you to have this book, for them to have their practice, for more people to offer mindfulness and just getting back to the roots of trusting our bodies, I think is really needed and powerful. And it's going to be different for everybody. All of our journeys are different, but it was lovely to open your book. And I haven't read everything you've written, but it was really nice. And I love the way it's set up, by the way. It was really fun to read too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I highly encourage masturbation later on in a chapter down the road. So.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
There is nothing that makes me feel more right now in my life that makes me feel embodied than sex. Like, it's one of those things where I can feel so disconnected for days and then really great sex. And I'm like, oh, my body is so great right now. Like, it's that connection of mind and body too.
So it really is really, really important. I'm going to have Peggy Orenstein on for on a future podcast that's going to come out in May, which is Masturbation Month. My kids are going to know that their bodies are amazing, you know, vehicles for the world and sources of pleasure. And that was something that I was not taught.
Right.
And it is very important, I think, for, you know, empowerment and just, and body trust, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah. When I was in Jamaica, I posted a picture. I felt like it was important. I kind of wanted to keep it to myself, but then I also was really isolated. One, I was by myself, far, far away. And two, I feel like it's important to see fat bodies living life. For some people, not everyone. But I posted this picture of me in a bikini and, oh my God, in the ocean. It was just beautiful and turquoise. And I wrote a little letter to myself in the corner and it said, "Dear fat body, thank you for taking me amazing places today. You're pretty awesome. Love me." And I feel like, you know, that's kind of where we start out in life as kids. We think our bodies are pretty cool for what they do. And we somehow lose all of that. And I'm really trying to get back to that. And a lot of people will tell you, people who are scared to lose their body currency by being thin and desirable to society, people who will tell me, you know, in a way that that's like a failure, like that's kind of giving up. But for me, it's become freedom. And so I think it's really important to go back to the basics and be like, man, my body is my body. It's different than everyone else's. It works differently. I have mental illness. A lot of other people have visible and invisible diseases. We're all different. Um, but what do our bodies do that's fundamental that helps us engage with life? That's the important shit, right?
Yeah. I think it is. And even I love the idea of freedom. Like, you can't, I mean, yes, we can all do what we can do to actively, work to change our culture that we realize is unhelpful and harmful. We also need to find our best version of freedom, that we actually have the power to free ourselves, right? While culture stuff is happening, because life is right now, it's happening. So that note you wrote to yourself, it was like there was self-acceptance there and empowerment and like I choose to write this and to feel this way and to treat my body this way. And that is a freedom that you can give yourself by making the decision,
I think it's complicated because I just want to add this. I agree with you. I agree with you. Ultimately, and I feel like it's a very ideal and worthwhile goal to go after, but we have to also realize, and this is the hard part where there aren't really a lot of answers, that freedom in our bodies is limited because of the world we live in. People who have disability, they literally have a very small percentage of accessible subways in New York City. Like, our world is literally not created for them. Black and brown people are killed because of their skin color only. And, there's these things, fat people are denied good health care, which ultimately harms everyone, and jobs and all of this discrimination that makes them not want to leave the house. And if you intersect any of those, you really have a shit hand of cards. And so I think it's important to realize that
it's not enough.
If you're not feeling free, the world is fucked. It's not you. And I think most people know that. We have to acknowledge the world and what it does to us for many reasons. And then with what we've got, I think, of course, we want to try and make the best of that. However we decide to do that. And so I know it's kind of a downer because we want to all just feel free and happy and, say, fuck your ideals, I'm going to go live my best life. And we can try. It's just going to look different for everyone else. It's going to look different for everyone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of like you're going to be limited into what version of that best life is because of the external determination of what culture says is like your little playground. Like, this is how far you're allowed to take it because culture is eventually going to lock you into a smaller area.
But one thing we can eliminate, which is exactly what we're talking about, I'm going to bring it full circle, is just letting go of the baggage of needing to be beautiful and thin and all of those things. Like, that is something that we can, it's going to take a while. We've learned a lot of stuff that it's really harmful. But, I mean, that is it's a mental state that we learned and can potentially unlearn. So letting go of that will definitely free up some space, right? I mean, that is what I really hope to give people permission to do, is just to let go. We've got enough going on. We don't need to worry about being beautiful for the world too.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I actually re-listened to The Beauty Myth, and it's so depressing that nothing has changed, and if anything has gotten worse. I'm just like, but we still gotta keep, like you said earlier, keep moving forward. But on that note, I feel like what we've been talking about is a good segue to talk about. So, Things No One Tells Fat Girls. Is that your first book?
Yeah.
What a great, I can't believe that was your first book. That was so well written. I listened to it, which you were great. I love when the author reads their book, and you did amazing. And so, I mean, when I was doing dishes, you were in my head. When I was going on my walks, you were in my head. And I recommend it to my clients and definitely to listeners to pick it up. The thing I got out of it was like, this is like a supportive friend who really cares about my well-being and is going to say, almost like in Body Kindness, I talk about like building your inner caregiver voice. I feel like your whole book was a caregiver voice. Like, here's some bullshit and here's what you're going to do anyway, no matter what. And it was, motivating and encouraging and like practical problem solving too. So like, here's what we're going to do on airplanes, here's what we're going to do with clothes, so I just loved it. And even kind of when you felt you needed to, there was like this little, kind of rah, but almost like a little like kick in the pants too, like to really kind of keep people taking action, which is real important to me because I think that it's through our actions that we create, change in our life as individuals. So I love it. It's awesome. I would love if you had a recent, like, I mean, it could be from the book or just something you're doing lately, but that's in the mindset of, just do it now, do it anyway.
Something that I'm doing or thinking about that's like that?
Sure.
Well, it has to be travel for me right now. Okay. I think, I don't know really how to separate all of these out. There's small fats and there's medium fats and there's large fats and there's super fats. I don't really know where I fit in all of that. But what I do know is that my body size, I refuse to let it limit me because I choose to let it limit me. And of course, we all have limitations because of the world and how the rides at Universal are sized and all of that, But for me, I can fly. It's not the most comfortable, but I've come up with my routine. I've honed it. It is perfect. It's wonderful. And it is so important for me to travel. I don't know why. I think I got it from my grandma. And so I refuse to let other people's animosity or fears stop me from doing that. And that's a constant struggle because I've never seen the internet lose its shit as much as when I write about deserving to fly while fat. People it's this really weird scarcity space money thing that just riles people up. So it's really hard to fly when you're fat. It just is. And, walking into another country, what are you going to, what to expect from them? But for me, it's important. So I do it and I fly all the time. And I'm glad that I'm able to do that because that's really important in my life. And I refuse to let other people tell me what to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And I mean, but when you make those decisions and take actions on those things, it enhances your life, right? Like with the travel example, new experiences and people and things, and probably things that you can internalize that help you in other areas, like, or, potential connections between your experience in Jamaica that is helping you work on, something that you care about in your own life back at home, and it's like, well, I need to be grateful for that experience because I did the travel thing, which I care about, but I also learned something that I otherwise wouldn't have learned that's now part of me.
Right. I want to tell those people who are maybe too afraid to travel to other countries. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things I learned in Jamaica is that America is small and insignificant, ultimately. Mm. I think we get so caught up in, yeah, we are a large country and we have a lot of power and people watch us. But our views are our views and not everyone shares our views. Like, we are not God. And I don't know why we think we are, but we're not. And the entire world is not structured the way America is. And it was so nice to get out of that, to remember that. I think we get really stuck in believing everything that surrounds us, of course, and not to invalidate the struggles that are in America and that we're all working on. But at the same time, it's not everything. And I just want to remind people of that because perspective is good. And, we're told fat bodies are bad. They're not. We're told that this is the only way to live. It isn't. And you don't necessarily have to fly to Jamaica to learn that, but that was something that was just really a core thing that I needed to be reminded of. And that helps me with perspective here as I work in Tucson and online.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What is, what would you say is something that, any listener could do, they're working hard on their self-acceptance. They're working hard to kind of fight that urge that, their body is the problem, their weight, their appearance, that's a problem, that's getting in the way of, having a better life and being happier. What kind of advice would you give to them if they're working really hard on that stuff, but they're just struggling because everywhere you turn, something diet culture smack in the face?
Yeah, totally. It's really hard. You can't really escape it. Mm-hmm. I would just remind them that their body is not broken. Our society is. Mm-hmm. And, this is a really difficult thing to challenge because we are faced with it. It has created armies of people who believe in the beauty myth, in body currency, and being better than others based on their bodies. And so it's, you also have people around you who are preaching that to you. And I just, they're brainwashed. They bought into it. They've spent their entire lives trying to become this, vision of perfection so that they can be happy. And that's not where the happiness lies. And so when you feel discouraged, which often happens, I still feel discouraged, I just remind myself that I am not broken. That's not how this works. It's a lie. The stuff around me, as hard as it is to challenge, is what needs to go. And I, at the fundamental core, I deserve to love myself. I deserve to feel okay. I deserve to have worth and value. And that is just an inherent human right.
That's beautiful. On that note, how can people find you, follow you, stay in touch with you? I'm so excited about your next book. What's the plan for that? Do we have to wait a while for that one?
Yeah, I am not sure about the timeline. This is a tough one to write. Mm-hmm. I've got a few months left on it. But somebody asked me what it's titled. We don't know yet. What it's about, we don't know yet. But I can tell you that it's about honesty and vulnerability. And I really want to talk about some of the really hard things that we're still scared to talk about within our fat activism and body love world. So that should be, it's hard for me to write, but I think it's going to be really helpful, hopefully. You can find me themilitantbaker.com. And at the top of my blog, there's all my social media. I'm mostly on Instagram. I have someone running my Facebook for me, but you can sometimes find me there. If you want really good articles that will challenge your thinking, go to Facebook. If you want cool quotes and pictures of my cats, you can go to my Instagram. That's where you can find me.
So cool. Well, thank you so much for chatting today. I loved your book. I love following you on social media, and I know everything that you put out there, I know is making a huge difference. And I'm sure because you've been doing this for so long, you might question, did I make a difference? Was that helpful? Am I pushing things further? And I just from where I stand as a fan of yours and follower, it sinks in, and it does challenge me, and it also teaches me, and it really is this ripple effect, right? We can all learn and grow from each other, and you are definitely one of the few people who I looked to when I was working on body kindness to kind of how do I take all these wonderful truths and channel that into something that, helps people who say, I'm done with this dieting BS, but I still care about my health. So how do I do it in a way that is as kind and gentle to myself as possible? So I just want to say thank you, and keep up the awesome job, because we all need it.
You are so kind. The same to you. And thank you for having me and letting me ramble as much as I wanted.
All right. Well, take it easy.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Okay.
Body Kindness Classroom is coming. If you're ready for some radical collaboration, check out bodykindnessbook.com and check out Shop for more information. We're going to be having classes on body kindness calm and body kindness food. I'll see you in school.